Hi, this is Kel Lemons, and this session is We've Got You Covered. We're going to talk about all the ideas to help you fill your pages just in case we don't know what's going to happen this year. So let's get started. So there are a lot of unknowns this year. You know, will sports teams play their whole seasons? Will they play at all? Will we have school picture day? Will there be pep rallies and homecoming? Are we going to be on campus? Are we going to be virtual? Is it going to be a mixture of both? What's going to happen this year? And so since there is so much uncertainty, it's going to be a little difficult to plan pages. But that's okay. We're going to get this handled. Traditional student life topics, might have to go by the wayside. You might have to be more creative. And so the bright side of this is that you have this chance to revolutionize your book. You can reinvent your student life and your people section. You can do clubs and sports in a bit of a different approach, a more innovative approach. So let's strategize. So I'm going to hit on a couple of things that can help you. So one is to go chronological, and then to consider blended coverage, and to have a more robust student life coverage in the book, and to use a magazine style approach, and to think really creatively about your coverage of classes and clubs and sports. And so we talk chronological, this is not the year to do a traditionally organized book. You're just shooting yourself in the foot if you do a section that has student life and people and sports and clubs. And then what if those sports don't happen and you're going to be in a jam like you were this past year trying to fill in space? So let's go chronological. And that might mean that your book is weekly, or your book is monthly, or by semester, or by season. But this is going to allow you to make changes along the way, and this is going to make you much more flexible. So this is awesome. It also helps the plan because you're turning pages in order, and so we're able to print pages as we go. If you're not aware, pages are printed in signatures, which is a flat of 8 pages on one side and then 8 pages on the other side. And if there's a page missing in that flat of 16, in that signature of 16 pages, then we can't print it. So going chronological is going to help you to do a better job in organizing your book and not have weird holes. And you're going to help us to get your book printed, which is going to help you get your book faster. So all great things. You want to consider blended coverage. And if you're not familiar with this term, it's also called umbrella coverage. And basically what it is that you are combining topics and things. So you might be putting more than one class on a spread, or you might be putting more than one club or several classes or several sports, or it might be a mixture of all those things. And they're sharing space on the same spread. And they're grouped by topic or by date. So here's Hendrickson High School. They typically do a weekly book. And so different groups, they usually try to have a club coverage, a sports coverage, and a class coverage on every spread. You're going to have more student life coverage this year. I think, there's a lot of uncertainty if traditional events are going to happen and sports are going to happen. And so we're going to need to focus more on topics that we know we can feature. And we're going to talk about that a lot more in just a little bit. I think you're going to need a more magazine style approach to your design. I don't think we can approach books the way we have in the past. You're not going to be able to put 30 photos on a spread. You're just not going to have them. So this is a chance to revolutionize the look of your books. Take this challenge and embrace it. You can totally turn everything on its head. That means you should probably have more storytelling. You're going to have less photos. You're going to have more white space. Yes, for the white space. And you're going to have more quick reads, much like magazines do. And then we want to think creatively about the coverage of our classes and our club and sports. And this goes into that magazine style that I'm talking about. But again, more storytelling, less photos, more white space. You need to rely more on cutouts and mugs. And then you need to utilize graphics and color more. So we're going to talk about these ideas, especially number 3 a lot, ideas for coverage. And y'all, I had to just stop finding stuff because this show got so big, y'all. It has 200 slides. That's the most I've ever done. And so we've got to get going because we're going to be really close and running out of time. So we're going to get you going for ideas. There are so many great ideas. You definitely want to screenshot this page. Lots of options. A lot of this is student life things. Some of it's stuff you've done before, but some of it's you haven't. I think pandemic fashion would be a great coverage. What are we wearing? We've been talking about if you're at home, you're probably in PJs. And then people started dressing up because they need to feel dressed up. So your teachers probably probably going to start dressing up again. But are the kids still in PJs? I think this is a great topic. There's lots of things that we can cover. And I have lots of examples in here, some that I pulled from magazines, some from books, some that I created, but I can't cover everything. So I think there's a lot of cool ideas, like how has life changed? How has school changed? How has the world changed? I think there's some really important storytelling to do in our books. So be thinking about ideas as we're going, and hopefully this inspires you. So let's get started. So I think what you missed, what did we miss this year? A lot happened in the last couple months of school. Did you really get it in your book? And some of you did, but some of you were already done, or they only had a couple pages left. So let's look at, what we could do. Why not recap those missing months? Maybe you talk a little about remote learning, or about how AP exams happened, or about if your school ended early. I know some schools did, about sports getting canceled, about proms not happening, or maybe they were virtual proms, finishing your book, heck, distributing your book, that deserves a spread. What did you do to honor your seniors? How did you have graduation? And then don't forget, if you want to cover, what was happening in your city, what was happening in the world. You might want to put the protests in your book. That's totally up to you. What do you want to recap this year? And so the first thing I think you do is you could do an overall strategy where you just have one spread that hits on everything. So this is a great example of blended coverage. So this is an old spread. This is Thrall from 2018, but it's a great example of wrapping up the spring semester. So they've got small photos, and they've got little mini headlines for things that they covered, and just a little caption. This is a great way that you could cover the end of spring, kind of what you missed. Same school, just the following year, they just did it in a more laid out, straightforward way, different things they wanted to cover a little more of. Hill Country Christian School did the same thing. It has a magazine style, the vertical layout, and they hit on several dates on things that happened in their spring that were important. Maybe that's the way you want to go. Maybe you want to hit on a couple important dates from March, April, or May, or maybe into your summer. Little Rock Central High School in 2019 also did a What You Missed spread. And so this was things that happened at the end of the year that they couldn't get in their book the year before. So that was their graduation. And look at this calendar that I love. Instead of a traditional story, it's got little timeline of dates of important things. Maybe you do that. I love that. At Awanda High School in 2019, they also did a What You Missed spread. And look at, they've got their graduation in there, but they've got a couple other events that are important too. Bowie High School this year, here's their What You Missed spread. And the big mod is the yearbook distribution. And so that's something y'all should do for 2021. I think that would be awesome to put in your books, whether it's a whole spread or it's a dominant module. This is so smart. McNeil High School this year, here's their kind of wrap up of what happened at the end of the year. And I think this is a great way to cover what you missed. So they've got a couple different things that happen. Their senior walk, and there are those AP exams and prom and graduation. And then there's just quotes to go with it. Very simple, very easy to do. All right, maybe you don't want to put it all in one spread. Maybe you want to do several spreads of what happened. And so maybe you didn't get to cover remote learning very well. So maybe you're gonna do extra coverage. So here's Holy Trinity Episcopal with their remote learning. And here's Buffalo High School. They had a mod on it. And look at how she's sitting on her bed. And then here's the kids sitting on the couch at St. Thomas Episcopal and the kids Zooming. Maybe you want to talk about the proms. Here's Inglemore's coverage of prom and people that had virtual proms and what they did on their prom nights. Here's Vista Ridge High School, and they had girls dress up in their dresses and share the photographs. Here's Westwood High School, and they covered, what happened, despite the school, getting canceled. People still had prom proposals before schools got canceled, and people went dress shopping, and so they covered all these things, which I think is really great. Maybe you want to focus on your graduation. Maybe you couldn't get that in your book. And so, here is Inglemore, their school had a caravan. And so they were able to get this in their book, but maybe you didn't. So maybe this can be in your book this coming year. Staley High School also had a caravan. And then I love up in the top right corner, they ran Instagram posts of seniors in their caps and gowns. I just think that's really great. Sacred Heart in 2019, here's the spread that they did. And I like this because maybe you didn't get to go to your graduation. Maybe your graduation was completely virtual and no one could be there. So this is an opportunity that you photograph just the cap, and then you have quotes to go with it. And so Glacier Peak did this year, and I love this. And this actually even connects to their theme. Beyond All Doubt was their theme, so they've got that in there. And then they have this beautiful photo with the great blue sky and the quotes. I think if you don't have pictures of graduations, this is a really smart way to get seniors from last year included. Arlington High School did a couple of graduation related spreads, and I love this. This is honoring seniors. This is parents and teachers and alumni writing letters. That was a big thing this spring, is people wrote letters, you know, to the class of 2020, and they include it in the book. I think that's incredible. Maybe people decorated their caps. I think this is the perfect opportunity for coverage in your book. This is Anderson County High School. Hill Country Christian School also included caps in their coverage. And then they even covered their ceremony. And I love this beautiful photo of the sunset in this socially distant chair. It's just so smart. And then here's Arlington High School again, you know, and they did all these different pictures of people in their caps and gowns. And again, this is all crowdsourcing. And then I love, over in the corner, you have this QR code, and there is video of more people in their caps and gowns. So I love this. They're getting as many seniors as they could in there. And this is so simple. There's no story, just lots of photos, all crowdsourced. You can do this. So that's everything that we've already happened. But now we need to get into this school year. And so maybe you want to do an update on COVID. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of old spreads from this past year, but it should inspire you and get you ideas. You know, what's up with COVID-19? You know, what's the newest? What's the latest for people to tell them? You know, how, you know, what's happening now? You know, what are the numbers now? Look at this calendar approach Little Rock Central did. And I think you could do this. You could cover what happened in April and May, or June, July, or August, September, October, November. Maybe you have a spread like this in each section of your book. I think there's lots of possibilities. Leander High School did that calendar approach, and they did a map. So did St. Thomas Episcopal. And the thing is with these maps is those maps are dramatically different now. You know, there were only some red dots back in the spring. There are lots of red now. You know, so what does it look like now? And what's it gonna look like in 3 months? I think these are stories we need to tell. Okay. I think everybody knows that they have to have a mass spread in their book this year. I mean, there are just so many stories to tell. I feel like I could fill a whole signature of mask ideas. So let's look at some things. So maybe you're going to cover the fashion aspect, you know, the prints and things. You know, what are we doing with our masks? You know, mask selfies. And so look at some ideas we have. So, you know, cool patterns and prints. The fashion, trying to match the mask to what you're wearing. I love all the masks that have celebrities or are icons on them. I think that a module on, you know, comparing the different shapes, you know, some masks fit differently, some fit better than others. What about the different types of masks, you know, N95 masks versus cloth masks versus those plastic face shields that are popular? What about features on kids that sew masks? You know, what about the anatomy of masks instead of anatomy of a mom? All my Texas people know what I'm talking about with moms. Of course, mask selfies. And then how much mask costs? Could you do a module on quotes about masks? Could you do surveys about masks? And y'all, I'm telling you, we have lots of ideas for quotes. So maybe it's one word to describe your mask. Maybe you ask people what it's like to wear a mask. Maybe you talk to your athletes about what it's like for them. Maybe you talk about the challenge they're wearing all day, because I know they get hot. I know they get uncomfortable. Maybe you ask people if they think it's important or they're necessary. You know, not everyone agrees, and that's okay, but we need to express different people's opinions. So that goes into surveys. You know, maybe we should ask people, you know, should you wear it out in the community? Should you have to wear them at school? Should athletes have to wear them during workouts? Do you think they protect you? Again, you know, not everyone agrees on this. So let's get the community's perspective at our school and run those results. And then I put together a couple of mask spreads just because I thought it would be fun. And you know, this is photos that I crowdsourced, and I asked people permission on Facebook. And then there's just one photo I took, and I photographed a mask on a piece of poster board in my house. And y'all, I didn't use a fancy camera. It's just my cell phone for that blue picture, but just fun, simplistic coverage. You know, here's another one. I did this spread also, and I photographed some masks that I bought from Old Navy. And then again, I used photos from Facebook that I asked people if I could use. And instead of a traditional story, because I don't know that you can do a traditional story on masks, but I think you would get a lot of people's perspectives. So how about a Q&A and, you know, little mugs of each person, asking them different questions about masks. And I think we get some really compelling coverage. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I bought a lot of things online in the last couple of months. And I don't normally do that, but I got hooked into buying a couple things because I couldn't go to stores. And so I think that there's some stories to tell about this. You know, what are we ordering? Well, we're ordering groceries. And okay, maybe the students are ordering, but they're convincing the parents to buy things for them that they want. So maybe that's your angle, or your faculty. And of course, we're buying clothes and shoes and purses and jewelry and tech stuff and books. And again, if you're sitting here going, my students don't do those things, maybe this is a faculty spread. Maybe this is in your people section. I'll show you what I did though. Oh, before I show you what I did, so if you're looking for design ideas, Martha Stewart Living, does a really great every issue, a spread that's basically showcasing purchases, things you can buy, and they're all cutouts and they have information about each one. Also HGTV and O Magazine, they both do these really well. So those are the three sources that I would use if you're looking for ways to design the spread. And it's gonna be so easy to photograph things or have someone share a photo that you can cut out and use. So these are the things that I bought. And I put this into a spread just to show you how easy this is to do, because this is really fun. So this could be a faculty spread for you, or if your students did buy stuff online. And I love this. And so these are things that I bought. Obviously, I'm obsessed with yellow right now. And I bought the solar system that I'm not wearing today, but I'm wearing my other solar system, my Saturn necklace today. Really fun. And again, every idea I'm showing you, if you're like, don't have space for that, or I'm not super excited about that, fine. Can it be a people spread? Look, this is the same idea, just run across the bottom. Okay, in addition to ordering stuff online, we're also ordering food online. And so this is a great opportunity to put this in your books. And so, we really miss going to restaurants. So we're ordering online. Let's put that in our books. We're going to restaurants and we're picking up food. We're having food delivered to us. Now restaurants have slowly been reopening. And so what's it like to go to a restaurant in person? And then what about students who work in restaurants? What about students that deliver food? I think these are all compelling stories that we should be telling this year. And so here's Texas Tech, and this is covers they did on their on-campus dining. Maybe you're not gonna be able to do that this year, but the concept I love. Look at this magazine style. Look at these photographs of the items. I think you could do this with food that was delivered. I think this is a really cool spread that should inspire you. Here is Pato High School, and this is the spread they did this past year on, popular food people ate, and then, family recipes. And I think this should inspire you because the design is so beautiful, and you could absolutely do this look in your book. Here's a spread that I made, and it's all food that I picked up or that I had delivered. I became obsessed with Mooyah burgers, and I would get it, paleo with no bun. So I did order a gluten-free bun at one point so I could take this picture. But I think there's stories to tell. You could have quotes from students about what they ordered or what they picked up. You could have a poll on how they're ordering. Are they using DoorDash, using Grubhub? Are they calling the restaurant? I think there's lots of cool stories to tell here. And again, if you don't have space, it can run in your people section. So we're talking about food. So we're not just ordering food, but we're actually in the kitchen cooking. And I think students are doing it. It's not just adults doing it. So here's Henderson High School. This is a girl that loved to bake bread, and she started her own business. And I think bread baking was huge this year. Here's a mod from Inglemoor on bread baking. And then of course, we're also making pizza. So this is Martha Stewart Living, right? But I think you could incorporate this into your book. Or maybe we're ordering pizza, and this is different slices of the different types of pizza you could get. Desserts were big. This is a mod from Glacier Peak. Here is all food that I cooked, and I threw together a spread. And I think that there's compelling ways to cover, maybe just be a people section and it's just a story in one photo. Maybe it's done in a different way, or maybe it looks like this. And, these are all photographs that I took with my iPhone, nothing fancy. Here's another example, just, small pictures, kind of a mugs and quotes type mod, but instead of it being a mug, it's a picture of the food you made. So lots of great ways to get students in there. In addition to all of this, if we are virtual, which I think some of us are going to be, or at least part of the time, we got to get that in our books, especially because if we are virtual, how are we going to cover academics? I think this is a great way to get some academic coverage in there. And so I think there's lots of ideas. So we're talking about, remote learning, we could have mods on, adapting to the new normal, the difficulties and challenges, but then also the benefits. If your school gave out laptops to kids, how did that work? How did that happen? Where are you working from? Are you at your couch? Are you at a dining room table? Are you in your bed? If you have a desk, what's the setup like? I think that would be a cool pictures of people's desks. What about if you're using your own laptop? What are the different types? Are you using iPads or Chromebooks? So I think these are compelling stories. So Hill Country Christian School did a really cool, they did a couple of supplements, and they're like small miniature ones that tipped into their book. And so here's some of their remote learning coverage, very simple photographs, all put together. Here's students working from home. I love this. This is from Ion. This is a supplement that comes out on Sundays in the Statesman. And this is, featuring different new laptops. Couldn't this be a spread in your book, the different types of computers your students are using for their remote learning, and then quotes for them? I think it's pretty cool. What about Zoom ideas, right? A lot of schools are using Zoom. So of course, you gotta have a spread on Zoom selfies. And then I think there's funny stories to tell. And maybe there's stories about crashing meetings. And I think that there's a story to tell on all the fun backgrounds you can choose if you don't want people to see your house in the background. And speaking of, one of the really fun things that have come out of this pandemic is we are so curious people. We're analyzing people's backgrounds. So why don't we put that in our book? You know, what's that painting? You know, what's the book on the shelf? You know, what posters behind them? And I think we've done this to politicians and to celebrities. You know, there was a Jimmy Fallon where we were analyzing the books because we thought they were yearbooks in the background. You know, I think people, when they saw Betsy DeVos images, they were surprised that she didn't have books on her shelves. I think there's some stories to tell here. So here's Shawnee Heights, and here's their Zoom selfies. Here's Suncoast, kind of similar, but they put it with a graphic, you know, in a computer. Here's one that I created from one of our Balfour marketing meetings. And notice I did a little mini story for each person. I'm going to tell you that that story on Oscar would definitely talk about why he doesn't put his picture up, because you know you have students that don't want to show their face. Then you have a module on the side that has more people, and maybe it's the positive, maybe it's talking about the rewards. Lots of fun things you can do. Here's another spread that I did, and I took this from a meeting I had from ILPC's summer workshop. And maybe it has a traditional story, and then maybe it has quotes from students about the challenges. And so that's got 14 more people. So if you're worried about getting people into your book, these are great ways to do it. And then here's one more fun one. When one of our instructors, Anna, and I had a meeting, you know, I snagged this picture of her because she had this incredible background. And I think we're doing this, we're analyzing, you know, what is this, what is that? And I think this is a great story. Maybe you do it with one person, with your teacher, or maybe you do a whole, like it's everybody in your class and you're pointing one thing from each kid. I think this is an incredible opportunity here. Also on the bottom, on the left mod, you have all the backgrounds. I think there's lots of background options these days with mods, with Canva and Zoom. You know, maybe The Simpsons is your background, or maybe a tropical beach because you wish you were there. I think there's some great stories to tell. Okay, moving on. You know, we've done lots of things in the last couple months, and it's going to continue in the fall and into the spring. You know, how are we keeping ourselves busy? And so lots of ideas, you know, so we're playing board games and puzzles, and we have hobbies, and of course we're binge watching shows, which we almost always put in our books, and we're exercising in different ways, and we're reading. You know, what are the best books we've read? You know, what books are we rereading because they're favorites? You know, audio, ebook versus paper. I think there's stories to tell. You know, we're creating art. And we're cooking. So I think there's so many opportunities here to tell stories. So let's look at some examples. So Hill Country Christian, you know, here's what people did when their spring break got extended. You know, Inglemore, you know, here's what people did when they were in quarantine. They were skateboarding and playing music, and they were painting and hanging out with horses. You know, Stanford Middle School, you know, how were they exercising? You know, skateboarding and doing dance and biking and playing Twister. I love the playing Twister photo. Shawnee Heights, you know, again, what were they doing in their quarantine? You know, what was it like? You know, so what are your people doing at home? You know, let's cover how are we keeping ourselves busy? And, you know, one of the ways we're keeping ourselves busy is we're reading, and hopefully we're reading more. You know, I'm a big book fanatic, but, you know, we might not be in school, right? So if we're at home, you know, normally you can't get that big stack of photos you would normally photograph, but you can photo books separately. And so this is from O Magazine, and I love this. And so there's 10 different books featured, which means you could get 10 different students covered. I think this is awesome. Here's the same concept from Rouse High School from several years ago when I was there. And, you know, we had 15 different students in the books that they were reading, and we did a graphic. So maybe you can't take that stack of books if you're not in school, but you can, you know, do an artsy interpretation of it. I love this. This is so fun. I had so much fun making this. You know, board games have become more popular. We're playing with our family. So let's put that in our books. And so I took my Scrabble board and I took this photograph. And y'all, I took this photograph with my cell phone, not a fancy camera. I just photographed this on white. I think you do the same thing with puzzles. You know, I could see a spread that has a puzzle, and all the puzzle pieces are all over the spread, but there's an opening, and in that opening is where you put the headline in the story. I just think there's so many great ideas with this. And that leads me to, you know, let's get creative, right? And so what about the art stuff that people are doing at home? So here's Hill Country Christian's coverage of art. Look at how just the paint becomes that dominant photo. You know, here's Cedar Park talking to artists and how they've gotten better over the years. Chalk art was a big thing right now that people have done to keep themselves busy. And the ones that I've loved are the ones that are interactive, where the person becomes part of the chalk drawing. And so I created 2 chalk spreads just to show you guys, and this is so doable. And, you know, a couple of my close friends have little kids, so they lent me some photos. And, you know, we borrowed one photo from Glacier Peak, but I just think that there's potential here for chalk art. So here's one spread. But then here's a totally different version of it. And, the chalk photo, the big photo is from Pixabay, which is a free, site. But I think there's lots of opportunity for you to share what people are doing to keep themselves busy. Now, we always cover phones in our books, but I think we can still do it this year. And there are so many ideas, from cases and screensavers to how much time we're spending, to crack screen, to funny text, to the last text we sent, to emojis, to playlists, to social media we're doing. What apps do we love? What are we tweeting about? What filters are we using on Instagram? What are our Snapchat streaks? Are we obsessed with TikTok? How many followers do we have? Are we using Visco for our filters? Our clubs, what kind of social media stuff are they doing? That might be the only way to cover clubs this year. Lots of opportunity with cell phones and social media coverage. Here's from Englemore for 2019. This is a fun texting mod in their people section. VistaRich, here's a fun texting mod where it's people talking back and forth and telling the story behind it. It's really funny. Here's cracked screens from Leander High School and telling the stories. Here's TikTok coverage from Bel Air. Here's TikTok coverage from Cinco Ranch and also some Instagram and some Visco coverage. Here's TikTok coverage from tech, and look at the magazine style, the more storytelling, the design of this, very fun. Venice High School, here's TikTok, and you've got more of a stats approach. I love this. And then even there's some Instagram in here too. And so let's move on to stress. I'm trying to go fast because there's so much to cover. This is a big deal. High school students and middle school students they're stressed out. And I think that's even worse now with the situation that we've been in. And so I think we need to cover this in our books. And so I think there's ways to do it. So here's Leander High School. They did a very simplistic spread, just a cutout, but then they have the rest, these grades and all this content. And here's Ridgeview Middle School, and they use cutouts, which I think you can totally get by getting people to send you photos, even if you're not in school. Here's Pajo High School, and again, one photo, but then all these great quotes and all these great stats. There's definitely ways to cover stress, even if you're not in school. And when we talk about stress, one of the things that have been great in this pandemic is that our pets are helping us de-stress. They don't know why we're home. They're just happy we're home. Let's put them in our books. So here's faculty, and they're just these selfies with the faculty and their pets. I think this is great coverage. And then I love this Catterday spread from Claudia Taylor Johnson. This is awesome. And again, all these photos are crowdsourced. You don't have to take any of these photos, right? So you're not worried about getting the photos. You're going to be able to get the photos. I love this concept. And look how beautiful the design of this is. Here's exotic pets, and VistaRich put it in their people section. Here's people with their pets, Winnetonka. Again, this is all crowdsourced photos. This is great. Here's Bowie High School, and they've done a magazine style with the vertical alignment, and they've got it, in topics, Instagram and therapy dogs and exotic pets and teacher pets. I just think this is great. So profiles are something we should definitely have in our books this year. We always have profiles in our book, and I think we need to do it even more this year because, how else are you going to tell people stories if you're not in school? And so this is a great example from Time Magazine. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry, but I love this. There's really only one photo on it, so you just need one great photo. And then there's a cutout and there's a mug. But we're telling 5 people's stories. What a great coverage. Here's Claudia Taylor Johnson. Similar idea, just in a different way. They've done cutouts of all the different students, and they're telling their story, just a simple quote. And each of these photos was photographed separately and then put together on the spread. Same kind of concept, but they're crowdsourcing photos. Here's Rock Canyon High School, and look at all these different photos that are obviously supplied by the person, but they're great. And you're telling, all these different student stories, 4 different stories. Venice High School, these are all cutouts. We've got 8 student stories, and we've got quotes. This is all doable, whether we're at home or we're in school. These are all things that are doable for you guys. Here's Leander High School, and again, they're just quotes with these profiles. Interactive coverage, I think, is huge. These have slowly been more popular in books, and I think this is great for us because they don't rely on photographs as much. And so I like it because, it lets you connect to your theme, and it lets you involve your buyers in the book. And then of course, they don't need as many photos. And so you can do quizzes or this or that, or checklists or flow charts or fill in the blanks. So much fun ideas. So look at Cedar Park, it's kind of all those things. They've got the fill in the blank and the this or that and the checklist. Here is Day Middle School. The back page had a place to put the playlist and circle this or that and the things that they remember from the school year. I like that. San Elijo Middle School, they did Mad Libs connected to the quarantine, and I think that's so much fun. Peterson Middle School did a favorites fill in the blank. I love this. Time Magazine, this is cool. This is a matching idea. And I think a matching quiz would be really fun in your book. And look at the pops of color, how simple this is. There's no photos on this page at all. Rock Canyon High School, did a quiz. And I love this, is, about, how much of a jag are you? It's school spirit related. And then they have a scoreboard at the bottom, really fun. And then here's another interactive one they did, where look, you can put in your schedule. I love that. And they have other questions connected to the school year. This is Magnolia Journal. And I love the graphic look on the left. It's got all the facts, but then on the right, you've got this checklist. So how could you do a checklist in your book? Here's a flow chart. Flow charts are huge in books right now and magazines. And Cedar Park, this connects to their theme, same but different. And so this is the different grades. I love it. Here's Westwood High School and their flow chart connected with food and recipes. Look at Bowie High School. This is about a parking garage, which was a big deal on their campus because they were building a parking garage for all their students to fit in. And it's got a lot of sass to it. If you're worried about having enough pictures, maybe you're going to do more text-focused coverage. And so look at this from Austin High School, and this is so simple but beautifully done. What do you like about your school? Look at the colors, look at the fonts, look at how many quotes got put in there. Same thing, what's a favorite show you liked from childhood? Again, it's just a very simple answer, but you're getting a lot of people covered. Same idea from McNeil High School. They asked that question, what's your favorite comfort food? And then they got the answer. And y'all, there are 85 students covered. When else are you going to get 85 people covered? So this is a great way to squeeze coverage in, and there are no photos, and it's designed beautifully. Here's another beautiful design. This is Little Rock Central. Describe, your school in one word, and look at the beauty of the colors and how simple this is. Here's a teacher version, describing the teacher in one word. And again, there's no photos, but this is so cool. Holy Trinity, who's been an influential teacher in your life, and they have this tradition every year that they do these. Very cool. And here's a whole spread of people talking about their future. And there's no pictures, just really nice graphics. Same idea, Glacier Peak, this is connecting to their theme and people telling stories that you might not have known. Here's Henderson High School, again, connecting to their theme. And it's things connected with the coronavirus. And look at beautifully the color and how that makes this really compelling coverage, even though there's not a single photo on it. Look at this one. This is photos, but they've been graphically made. So maybe you use your artistic students, or maybe you involve art students to help you. And this is trends. Here's Cedar Park High School. And look at this bucket list. And again, there's just small pictures, to go with it. No real pictures or art things. And so here's that list again for you. So if you didn't screenshot it before, screenshot it now. So much coverage ideas because we're moving on. Academic and club coverage in your book. It's gonna look different this year. We gotta get really creative and innovative. You're gonna have to use less photos, more white space, more of a magazine style. I think you should rely more on mugs and cutouts. I think there needs to be more storytelling, and you gotta use more color, more graphics. So I love this spread from Episcopal School Dallas. Look at all the beautiful white space. Look at how there's only 6 photos on here. Look at the use of color, really smart coverage. Look at this from Hill Country Christian School, 1 photo. Maybe you're gonna get to have that one game. Well, this is the photo from that one game. Again, here's 1 photo. It's got some cutouts on the bottom. This is totally doable in your books this year, and beautiful design, and there's still tons of storytelling on here. Here's Texas Tech, and this is coverage of an adventure class. And look at how this magazine style with the 4 photos placed, and this is really compelling. So less photos, but great coverage and really innovative, more storytelling. Vista Ridge High School, there's only 3 photos on this theater spread, but then there's 5 mugs and quotes that become the alternative copy instead of a traditional story. And I think this is great because you might not have as many photos from events. Same idea from Bridgeland. This is academic coverage. And again, there's only 5 photos really on here. But you might be back in school just for a little bit. And so you want to snag as many pictures as you can. Here's Inglemore. This is this deco, one of their clubs, and there's only 2 real photos on here. The rest are cutouts and just beautifully designed still. So they're utilizing what they did have. I love this idea from Henderson High School. This is not classes or club coverage. This is about lunches, but the design of it, there's just these little cutouts and these quotes. Maybe that's your coverage of English classes or history classes, especially if you're virtual, or maybe this is your coverage of clubs. I think there's real potential here. And that goes into what we're talking about next. You got to be really creative with your topics and your photography. You're going to have to cover things in a different way, or maybe cover topics you haven't covered before. So here's school supplies. Maybe that's some academic coverage you do this year. Maybe you're going to cover a one picture of your school and have some stats. That's compelling coverage. So you look at this and you're like, okay, that's not school, right? But I saw this spread in Garden and Gun and I thought the design of this was beautiful. What if you are virtual? What if you start the year virtual? So your hallways are empty. I think that's a compelling story to tell. The books, what are we reading in our English classes if we're not in person? Or maybe we are when we get these photos, but I love the design of this. I love how each of these books are photographed separately so you can do this. Your foreign language classes, a lot of times they make food and then they have to do the recipe. So you could photograph this or have people send you the photo and you cut them out and this becomes your spread. Here's elective coverage from Episcopal School of Dallas. And notice there's not a single photo from the actual elective, but there's objects that represent the classes. And there's actually 8 different classes covered. This is compelling coverage. This is beautiful design. Let this inspire you for this coming year. You can revolutionize your books this year. Look at this club coverage. These are t-shirts. And maybe you're not gonna be in school the full time, but usually clubs are still gonna order t-shirts. So you can photograph their shirts or have people send you the picture of them. Here's more t-shirts, again, done in a different way. Here's club coverage. Maybe your clubs only get to meet once or twice this year. And so you just run that one photo and then a cutout of somebody. You're telling the story of 7 different clubs. This is a good example of blended coverage again. So let's move on to sports. So sports, again, the same idea. We got to be really creative with our designs and really creative with our coverage. And so that means, less photos and more white space and more magazine style and relying more on mugs and cutouts. And maybe we're doing a blended approach. Maybe it's different sports on the same spread, or maybe sports is mixed with other things. Maybe we're going to use more generic overall photos. It can be. Maybe we're going to tell stories in a different way. Maybe we're going to have really innovative angles and we're going to use more color and graphics. So lots of things more innovatively covering sports. So look at Staley. Look at this beautiful profile on this basketball player and look at the white space. Yes, that's a good thing. This is compelling. This looks like magazines. Look at this from Tech. I love this. This is Tech about the basketball team and getting to go back to the NCAA tournament, having another shot. And it did not happen. This is really, really compelling design done totally different. Again, you can revolutionize your book. Think of how creatively you can do stuff. Look at this one. This is Hill Country Christian School. And look at these cutouts for talking about baseball. Again, just different ways to cover things. I love this from this designer, Zach Ennis. Look at the design of this. Maybe this inspires you to cover your sports in a different way because you're going to have to this year. Look at this from Stanford University, and this is all, cutouts and stats, and I think this is really compelling design, and, maybe you're gonna have these games work with it, maybe you're not, but I think there's definitely stories to tell, and I think this is inspiring. I love this idea, the food that our athletes eat, and this is so easy to photograph, and this is a way to cover sports in a different way, just really compelling coverage from Hill Country. Look at this from Athleta Catalog, and this is really simple. Could you do this? Your sports teams going back to try to work out, you just need one photo from the weight room of them working out and maybe just a couple of cutouts on the side. What if that's all they got to do? What if they never got to have a season? This is compelling. Or maybe this becomes your PE coverage. I don't know. I think the design of this is really cool. Maybe you get one swim meet in or one soccer game in, or maybe there's only 2, so you do a big photo, big in the background. I love this. Here's golf. Maybe there's only 2 photos that you were able to get, but look at all this other coverage on the page. There's so much storytelling going on from Inglemore. Same thing with this badminton. Look at all this great coverage that's going on. Maybe you're going to use a sample photo in the background. This past year we gave you guys a lot of photos if you needed to fill in space. And so this is one that San Elijo used. They used the soccer in the background and they used the track field in the background, but then they used all their photos to tell stories. This is really smart for your coverage. Foster did a similar thing, but they used their own photo. They went to the softball field and they photographed the ball on the field. And then they used the photos they had from the one game they got to cover. And then they crowdsourced pictures from the girls and the JV team to send to them. And they came up with this gorgeous page. So you can do this with your coverage here, even if you're not going to have as many events, even if you're not going to have as many games. There's so many compelling things you can do with the design. Look at this one from Inglemore. There's not a single picture of the girls playing, but there's pictures of them with their rackets. So they were able to get these photographs. So smart. Look at this track page. There's really only 2 pictures of runners and the rest are just post photos, but yet this page is really well done. Currituck County High School, they weren't able to get a team picture this past year. So they ran a photograph of the field and they ran the small mugs of all the players and the positions they played. Again, this is compelling coverage. These should give you ideas for this coming year. And here's McNeil High School, covering freshman athletes. And they're just using photos of the objects. Could you use objects with your sports? I think there's so many cool ideas and ways you can do your books this year. I think this is exciting. I don't think we should be scared. I think we should embrace this challenge because we can really, do our books in a totally different way. And so I'm going to recap for you. So those 5 things that we talked about, that are going to help you with your coverage. I think going chronological is going to be huge for this year. I think maybe you can do some blended coverage, where you're mixing and matching things on the page. I think having tons of student life coverage, and I gave you a bunch of examples, so you should have plenty to cover in student life. I think having more of a magazine style approach to design is going to help you. And I think we need to think really innovatively, really creatively about our coverage of classes, clubs, and sports. Woo! I think that you have got it covered now. So many ideas and so much stuff to help you. I really hope that this has inspired you for the year and excited you for the year. If you have any questions, this is my information to contact me. I know I ran through some of that really fast. The first time I did this, the session was way too long, so I went a lot faster this time, but that's great because that gives us time to chat. So if you guys have questions, I'm here to answer them. All right, let's get going.